When I lived in Boulder, um, part of the reason I was able to do so well is because I had a lot of useful skills. Those are skills based on my interests. I made a ghillie suit. It's not an actual ghillie suit, and I suppose I should explain what a ghillie suit is. The Scottish, they well, they were basically taken over by the British. I say basically because it's kind of, but kind of not thing. But the Scots were known to be pretty good shots, and throughout their entire history, going all the way back to the Roman Empire, because the Scots, they were called the Caledonians at the time by the Romans. They didn't have a written language. The Romans did. But even back then, it was about hiding, not being seen. Their houses were not seen by the Romans. The Romans thought that they must have lived in the trees. The first black emperor of Rome, he died in Caledonia, chasing ghosts. Chasing tree people. He was also a mean son of a bitch. Now, a ghillie suit, there's a lot of different ones. There's a lot of different ideas and a lot of planning that goes along with it. And, I would recommend looking up ghillie suit, matter of fact. Um, when I was homeless, I had a lot of gear that I just I couldn't carry with me, but it was essential. The stuff that I kept with me at all points in time was the stuff that was expensive, like my computer. That stayed with me at all points in time. But then I had a whole stash of blankets. At one point in time, I had about 20 blankets under there. I could only fit about 3 or 4 full size quilts, but sometimes people would like those old military blankets. I probably had 2 or 3 dozen of them, and I got those all pretty much within a 1 week period. And it was also like very beginning of spring, might have been the end of spring, beginning of summer, but people didn't need them that much at that point in time. The Scottish, what they used to do is they would put on a ghillie suit, which is basically burlap sacks. They would wear burlap sacks, and they didn't really have to do anything real fancy. They just made a suit out of burlap sacks. As soon as you laid down and rolled over in it, you had a bunch of stuff stuck to you anyway, kind of like Velcro. And just that little bit of natural debris attached to you would make you even more difficult to see. The idea behind it is that it would break up your outline, and it was quite efficient at that. Later on, we started, and mind you, this is for poachers. This is some Scotsmen on some rich asshole's land, and their job is literally to shoot anybody who's poaching. Those are the king's deer. So those became popular, extremely popular during World War One, and the tactics that were brought forth by them Scotsmen are now used worldwide. I'm learning about paintball ghillie suits. When you're doing paintball, you're talking about a lot closer engagement distances. You're not talking about reaching out and touching somebody at half a mile distance. You're talking about, an airsoft sniper is, well, the record for an airsoft shot is 377 feet. Feet. Now, I get that that's over the length of a football field, but not by much. I mean, we're talking about 100 yards plus the end zone. So, yeah. One of the guys that I'm looking at, he's got a site on here, and I'll try to get it from this information, and I'll try to post it up here for you. Um, let's see. It's from Kicking Mustang, KICKINGMUSTANG. He's an airsoft sharpshooter. A lot of his, shooting, they do unit and squad tactics. And what he's trying to do here, he's teaching folks how to take crap from the arts and crafts store that obviously it's not going to work. It's too bright. It's too colorful. It's too gaudy. Well, in this video, he's showing people how to make a ghillie suit for up close and personal. Let's see, with YouTube. Um, Now this guy, I've watched a couple of his, or actually quite a few of them now. I've watched about 6 or 7 of his videos, and he's pretty good as far as airsoft. It just a little bit of wind catches it. If it starts raining a little bit, your accuracy is pretty much nothing. Um, but there was a military guy who was also with them, and he was saying that the ghillie suits for the military are entirely different. A lot of times it's just the shoulders and the head. Your body is free for the world to see. The reason for that is because your opponent is at such a distance that they're probably not going to see you anyway, and they're going to need optics and a flash to try to locate you. They're only seeing you from one angle. A way that I could explain this is, we'll say this is your head. This blue part on the top is your head, and this part's your body. Now, what's the purpose of this? Well, I want you to look at perspective. If you've got your sniper standing straight up, which he's not going to be, well, you can see most of his body. If you look at him from the back, well, you can see his whatever. But if you're looking at him from the front, now let's pretend that blue part is the ghillie suit. Now, we're not talking about being up close and personal like this, like in the airsoft. We're talking about being way the hell back here. When you're all the way back here, people have to do a wider swath to start to see one side or the other of you. See, if I move the computer this way, then you're going to start to see more of that side of it as long as the camera's pointed at it. And if I move it that way, it'll do the same thing this way. The military snipers, they don't want to carry a bunch of extra fucking gear. You just get your hood and your shoulders. For the airsoft ones, these are guys who are, this guy here, Kicking Mustang, people have stepped on him in games. People have literally jumped over him that were from the other team that just didn't see him. Like literally jump over him. You see his video, it shows a picture of their crotch over the top of him. With my ghillie suit that I had in Boulder, it wasn't something that I wore. What it actually was is a net that I found, and I took a bunch of raffia and a bunch of stuff like that, and I wove it into it so that it was more difficult to see anything that was underneath it. And I set it up. There was a berm against the hill right next to the creek, and it was, where some of the dirt was coming down, and there was some roots exposed, and there was also a lot of vines that were in the area. And I went, well, you know what? I'll just put this up against the roots, and I'll take it down every day. and I was going to stay under there every day too. Well, when I rolled out of it the next day, I was looking at it and I'm going, that kind of doesn't look out of place. That looks like that's exactly where it belongs. And I left it there for like a week. And I was thinking, if it's there after a week, perfect. If it's not there in a week and it gets stolen, well, on the bright side, I don't have to carry that god awful heavy son of a bitch because it was like 9 feet by 6 feet or some shit. It was fucking big. And well, after about a week, I didn't realize the vines were growing that fucking fast. They grew all through that thing, all over the top of it. I mean, it looked like it belonged there. And after that, all I had to do was, because it was kind of sand and mud at the bottom, um, I just lift it up there and crawl underneath, and eventually all of the vines and everything, they grew so that 3/4 of the thing was basically tied to the ground because so much had grown through it. But because I continued to lift it up in the sandy part and roll in and out of there, any of those things that tried to grow in that area were just going to get crushed, and it, well, isn't going to get the opportunity to grow in it. A lot of the stuff that people have that, their idea of a survival kit is 400 fucking pounds worth of gear that fits in the back of your Winnebago, or fits in the back of your station wagon, or fits in the back of your SUV, I guess is the popular version today. You can go up the mountains with a hatchet and the clothes you're wearing, and as long as you know what you're doing, you won't fucking freeze to death. If I was in the mountains right now, even as gimpy as I am, I do have the skills that if I needed to, and I got a couple hours before dark, which it's almost dark here if it's not already. Yep, it's dark. I shouldn't have said already. It momentary time lapse there. I was like I said, my sleep schedule's been pretty messed up, and for a moment there, it didn't occur to me that it was almost 5 a.m., not 5 p.m. It usually this time of year it's getting dark at 5 p.m. So I mean it's a lot shorter days. But getting into something, when I get into something, I fucking jump into it. I'm gonna fucking give it my all. As far as the airsoft thing goes, I had a $500 investment to put into it, and everything else that is going to go into it needs to come from stuff that I already have. There's a lot of stuff in here that I have that can be used to build a lot of different things. I have a pretty decent understanding of molding and those processes. I can mold plastic, I can mold aluminum, I can mold steel, I can cast iron, I can do a lot of different things. It's just a matter of having a place to do it. A lot of folks think that just because I have a this right here that it means that I get to do whatever I want. Like there's nothing inhibiting me, and that's where people's mistakes come in. They have it in their own heads that it's a certain way, and in reality, it's not that way. But you can't convince them otherwise, and it's not their business to begin with. But the people whose business it was through all of this went out of their way to make it other people's business, went out of their way to get other people to do horrible, terrible, rotten things for them in a very vindictive fashion. But then again, this is how the mentally ill are treated. This is how the homeless are treated. You see how Brandon treats me versus how he treats a pretty girlie that he just met. Sure, he likes me. He's known me for a lot of years. I love the dude. I really do. But On multiple occasions, he'd spent a week or more basically chasing some woman he's interested in, who's only pretending to be interested in him until he moves her to wherever the fuck she wants to go. And then she just ignores him. And then his heart hurts. He feels bad because here he is doing all of these good things, and these women are ignoring him, basically. They get what they want, and then they're done with him. And it doesn't feel any better when people do it to me. But at the same time, he's got a family. He's got a family that cares, and that's the important part. Snipers don't usually go out just one-on-one. They usually have a spotter with them to help them to locate an enemy, and if they miss, their spotter can tell them how much they missed by. That way they can recalibrate their next shot without having to adjust knobs. A lot of people got this idea, the lone wolf. Wolves are not lone. There's no such thing. You know what kind of wolves are by themselves? The ones who are going to fucking die. All right? Old wolves. You can find them by themselves. They're not doing anything. They're not hunting for anything. They're not trying to reproduce. They're not trying to get food. They literally go away from their family to die. That's what they do. That's a lone wolf. You just gonna crawl off and fucking die? Is that what you're gonna do? There's all these people that are homeless. They want to have these really cool tags, like some of them are like, yeah, I'm lone wolf, blah 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 blah. Like, all right, whatever, dude. Call me Shadow. Uh, you cast a pretty big one, bud. We all cast big shadows. Every one of us. It's all dependent on the lighting. In what light do you put somebody? That lighting determines their shadow. That shadow doesn't tell you anything about the person themselves. It tells you about the light, which direction the light's coming from. It doesn't tell you if that person is a good person or a bad person. It doesn't say a damn thing about the life they lived. What it has to say about it is, how do you paint the picture? How do you perceive it? How do you see it? Brandon isn't much different than Pierre, except that Brandon is a good man and Pierre is not. Brandon would give his shirt off of his back to a stranger. Pierre, he might if there's women looking. Now, Brandon, this is I don't know if it's the eighth woman, but it's the eighth time that situations like this where he's got to help a woman. Women come first. Women come first. Women come first. Well, shit, dude. You meet these women, you barely fucking know them, and you can literally drive to fucking Texas and back. You can spend a week doing that for somebody else, but you can't find the time in 3 goddamn years to write a fucking police report. And I talked to him the other day. Of course, I do record our conversations. He's like, well, I didn't know. I've been telling him for fucking 3 years. How do you not know after somebody's been explaining it to you for 3 years? See, that's the thing. Aaron Cockerham didn't write anything down. There is no evidence whatsoever to suggest that the things that I recorded her saying, there's no proof. She has zero proof. She has provided zero proof. She doesn't even know the name of the officer, just like Brandon. Just like Peaches. Miss Peaches said that she went in 3 times by herself to try to get it done. 3 times she talked to the police by herself. Oh, but guess what? She didn't know the name of the officers. These people were not trying to help. They were blowing smoke up my ass. And while they were blowing smoke up my ass, I was being abused. And then they want to play fucking victim because they're cowards. Well, fuck it. Be a goddamn coward. That doesn't mean I have to be. You want to hide behind your kids? You're making it worse for your kids, you son of a bitch. So let's look at this airsoft ghillie. Airsoft ghillie suit. And this guy's pretty popular. He's like ranked third or fourth among YouTubers. Clean Shot, Silo Entertainment, Kicking Mustang. That's the one I'm looking for. Why ghillies suck. A lot of folks hate the ghillie snipers. The airsoft snipers are a lot better at the camo because they have to be. When you're having to fire at people, mind you, the world record shot is 377 feet. Most people aren't going to be able to do that, and that was more than likely a lucky shot. Let's see. Most of these are uh, oh, let's see, Kicking Mustang. He types, I spent 24 hours hunting armed poachers. That's how ghillie suits got started. If you guys paid attention to the beginning of the video. Oh, damn. By the way, airsoft is copy link address. Airsoft is dangerous. Headshots are definitely shied away from. You don't want to. Oh God, I'm gonna sneeze. I guess I'm not. All right, this isn't the one that I was looking at. Oh, yes, it is. A lot of people say I have no idea how to even get started. Well, usually you get started by deciding you're going to make an effort. And then from there, it's a learning experience. If you're not willing to learn, then you are pretty much fucking useless. People here in Nebraska, they wonder why it is that their kids are ending up the way that they're ending up. But you look at what they grow up with. They grow up with their parents drinking all the goddamn time, just like their parents before them and their parents before them. For me, I got sick of that shit. I left Chapel, Nebraska because It's a whole bunch of fucking negativity. It doesn't matter who you are as a human being. Not even close. What matters is what do the popular people think of you? What are the popular people running around town saying about you? Forgive me, I'm about to urinate in a bottle. If you guys are insulted by that, well, kiss my ass. When you gotta go, you gotta go. On the bright side, I'm not pulling out my tallywhacker at a fucking local school. I'm peeing in a bottle. I'm not trying to expose my genitalia. I'm peeing in a bottle. I'm not going outside and doing the helicopter with it. I'm peeing in a bottle. Now, what do you do if you're a sniper? If you're an airsoft sniper, you're talking about a 45-minute game. It's game. 45 minutes. Of course, you're talking about a real sniper. You're talking about somebody who part of their loadout might be pissing themselves. If you need to stay there, you got an important target that you're waiting on. You might be there 2, 3, 4 days or more. You might be stooling in your own feces for a couple of days, and when you get back to base, you got to go take care of your rash. Sounds like a lot of fun, don't it? I learned this stuff, a lot of it, when I was younger. With ghillie suits, there was a guy I went to school with. His name was Zach Metcalf, and one of his things that he did in art class was a ghillie suit, and it basically looked like he tried to make a gorilla outfit. I mean, this thing was just covered, fucking top to bottom. I mean, it was like he wanted to look like a yellow yeti, but it was made out of burlap, just like the original ghillie suits. The difference is that uh, the original ghillie suits, it was just burlap sacks that were, you know, you cut some holes in the fucking shoulders, and then or to put your arms through, and then you sew a couple burlap sacks on that so that it all just basically bundles together. It breaks up your outline. It gives a contrast of light and shadow in a different way than the human body does or the human silhouette. But Zach's, what he did is he took the strands apart. He took apart these burlap sacks, strand by strand by strand, and tied them all into this thing. But he made the strands the same length. You don't want to do that. You want to offset them. You want it to look natural. I mean, you look at your lawn versus the grasses that you see in nature. The grasses that you see in nature are not fucking carefully groomed. They're not built. They don't have somebody come across with a grader and grade the ground so that it's flat. They don't have somebody who goes through in nature and cuts the grass for you. They don't have somebody in nature who says, well, we just want this specific type of grass, so we're going to go spray anything that's not that with something that'll get rid of everything but that. Same thing with a ghillie suit. Nature doesn't work that way. You work that way. And a lot of what separates the things that we see in nature from the things that we don't see in nature, well, we recognize the things that we see outside of nature almost immediately. When you're walking through the forest, right? Let's say you're from a city like Denver. You can see the forest around Denver, but there's really no forest inside of Denver. Washington State, there is. You can find forests in the middle of just about every city in Washington, but Denver's different. There was a point to that, but I forgot what it was as soon as I started going off about Washington State. I have to worry about real predators, not people like me who are painted in a certain light. It's not people like me that I have to worry about. It's people like you and your assumptions and your judgments and your belief that it is magically okay to do those things to me. It's fucking gross. With Brandon Ratner, a lot of you guys say, well, if they're being like that after all this time, they're not your friends. Well, you hear how he talks to me. You know, he says he's gonna. I want to believe it. That's the thing. I want to believe it. I want to believe that there aren't going to be 10 more women that he has to drive to fucking Texas or Louisiana or fucking Memphis or fucking Oregon. Who cares? Wherever it is that he's got to go. He does the same thing as that I do. He helps people. Most of the people that I helped were women, but it wasn't exclusively women. And I didn't make men wait a fucking shit time longer just because they have a penis. I wouldn't tell somebody that I've known for years that, hey, you just got to continue taking abuse because I'm trying to impress a woman. Yeah, no, I'm one of the few dudes who doesn't do that. And all these guys expect me to understand. Yeah, dude, no, I don't understand why I have gone through 3 years of fucking abuse because you're too busy chasing tail and making shitty assumptions. When he said he didn't know it was going to be like that, well, I fucking told you it was like that. I hope Brandon Jepson ends up homeless. The only reason he's not is because his mom fucking loves him. And his dad. And his brother. And his fucking sister. I keep hoping he ends up homeless. A lot of the most cruel things that I have heard out of people that I know came out of Brandon Jepson. When he was all excited up there in Torrington, Wyoming, and he was telling us about the techniques that they use to be sly. Like, what, when you know that he's guilty, but you can't prove it, these are the tricks that you can. I'm like, holy fuck. And this guy loves this shit. He wants to catch criminals. Meanwhile, he ended up being the criminal, didn't he? Worst part about that is, by law, he shouldn't be allowed to own or possess firearms. He was 20 years old with a firearm in his dorm room. Yeah, no, you have to be 21 years of age, first of all, and second of all, it's not allowed in the dorm room. Not allowed in the dorms at all. Of course, Brandon Jepson, he's pretty fucking spoiled. He's used to getting special treatment, and he thought he was going to get special fucking treatment again. Nope. But then again, yep, he did get special treatment. They still kicked his ass out, but they didn't charge him with a fucking felony.